Good morning and welcome to this third in a series of webinars provided by Shelter Island Risk. The topic this morning is one that we've been talking about for several years, getting a lot of attention in many organizations, enterprise risk management, and the goal of this morning's program is to pass on some advice for avoiding detours to the success of such programs. Shelter Island Risk, ERM, in analytics and in enhancing risk management information systems. I'm Rick Denning, President of Shelter Island, and I'm pleased to have joining me this morning in the program Rick Machold, CPA, who brings more than 25 years of experience in a variety of disciplines and industries. Rick most recently was head of enterprise risk at Invesco, where he had global responsibility for that company's program. Thus, he is skilled in the design, in the implementation, and indeed the operation of enterprise risk programs. His background is an impressive one. He has been a partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and he has worked with a variety of major organizations, including the Centers for Disease Control, Ryder Systems, Dell Computing, and most recently the New York Yankees, which if you follow those things could use something like ERM right now. He's also been a contributor to the literature in this field and a supporter and speaker at a variety of programs, including the University of Georgia's Executive MBA program. He lives in Atlanta, nearby, and again, we're very pleased to have his expertise on the program. As an introduction, I'd like to first of all make clear that this program is designed for you, and we're very interested in getting your questions answered in the process of the program. Please take advantage of the allowance in this technology to write out questions through the presentation, and at the end, we'll spend the time necessary to answer them. As far as experience coming from Shelter Island's ventures in enterprise risk, I think the most fundamental is the need for truly honest communication. If an organization wants to see the world the way they want it to be instead of the way it is, that's going to be a fundamental flaw in the way enterprise risk will develop and probably be a detour to its success. Secondly, ERM can address a wide, almost baffling array of risks. There's so many that it may be a problem to ever have the resources to invest in all of those possibilities. In my opinion, the better approach to ERM is one that's focused on the essence of your organization, what it is and how it delivers value, and what differentiates it from any other organization and makes it the best in that particular area. If you do that, I think you will end up with defining an ERM program which is more practical than one which may be based on a variety of possible risks, but not those that are truly strategic. Next, I think that nobody can do this job for you. Somebody who has a prepackaged set of risk maps is, I think, not going to be a success factor in your program. The critical part of, I think, identifying risks will come internally. And just like why I am a lousy tennis player because I don't pick up on the limitations and strengths of my opponents, so in the American Revolution, one of the keys to that success was that the Americans really understood and focused on the British and what they would likely do in reaction to various conditions. The British had absolutely no regard for the Americans, and hence they missed risks that could have otherwise been detected. And finally, I think any ERM program is not a spectator sport. There is certainly a very important role for a consultant to come in and address the first point about communication and identification in ways that the company may not like to address. But ultimately, the consultant's role is to be a coach and to transfer this success through a learning and adaptation process in your organization. That done, I think that you can avoid these detours and make some honest success out of these ERM challenges. I was at RINS in Vancouver and recognized that there were probably 20 or 25 sessions on ERM, and if you examined all of them and about what they represented, I think it reminds me of that that story about the elephant being described by three blind men. One said it looked exactly like a tree trunk. The other said, no, it's really a long snake-like object. And the third said, no, you're crazy, it's like a giant pizza. And I think those are some of the issues that we deal with in ERM. And I'd like to kick off this session to Rick by asking him, at his experience, to give a definition of ERM that we can use as a base for the remainder of the program. So Rick, thank you.
Rick, thank you very much for that as well. And ERM is not an easy thing to define, and for a lot of reasons. It's been done for a long time, and it's been done in many different ways and with varying degrees of success. And I think that's one of the reasons why groups like COSO, the Committee of Sponsoring Organizations, and others have strived to come up with a standard definition of ERM. And one of the most thoughtful definitions, in my view, as far as a standard definition, is the one that the COSO group came up with. Again, there are others. The Australia-New Zealand framework is another that I think is very good and effective. But even the COSO group, which is a very smart group of people, needed 50 words to come up with the definition because it is so far-ranging. And quite frankly, in this definition that you see, I won't read it and go through it in detail, there is not an extraneous word in that definition. In other words, every word in that definition refers to a specific and significant aspect or component of enterprise risk management. And so, albeit there are standard definitions, unfortunately, we still have to do the hard work of deciding what ERM is for our organization. But there is no one-size-fits-all. I mean, it's a one-size-fits-one proposition, unfortunately. And so we each have to, in our own organizations, decide what ERM is to be. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that means in a little bit. I just, after doing this for 15, 20 years, dedicated to enterprise risk management, just kept coming back to this 10-word definition, and that is just simply that when you really cut through it all, that enterprise risk management is about managing the business with a deliberate and systematic attention to risk. I don't expect anybody to quote this or put it in a book or an article, but it's just the way that I look at it, and I want to call out, I guess, two key words in that definition. One is deliberate. There needs to be a deliberate, meaning intentional focus on risk. We can sort of go through the day-to-day management process and delude ourselves sometimes into thinking that we are really considering the risks associated with the various opportunities and initiatives that we're in. But sometimes I've found that it really does help to step back and say, are we really doing the hard risk thinking and having the tough risk conversations that are necessary? So one is deliberate. Second is systematic attention to risk. What I mean by that is that there does need to be a process associated with this, I believe. I don't believe that an organization just left to its own devices can do enterprise risk management in a purely ad hoc way. So I think, although process isn't everything, I think it is very essential, but it's a means to an end, as we will get into. So again, there are standard definitions that abound. You can come up with a simple definition on your own, but we can't avoid the necessity of defining enterprise risk management in our own way, in our own unique way, in our own organizations.
Rick, I think all of us, at least I hope all of us, realize that risk-taking is fundamental to any venture, business or non-for-profit, whatever. And I think one of the reasons that enterprise risk has a rocky start in a lot of organizations is that there isn't enough appreciation paid to the fact that there is a plus as well as a negative to enterprise risk. And it's the balance of those considerations which are crucial. But when you're talking with an executive running a major firm, they want enterprise risk to be a vehicle to improve the profitability and the performance of the company and not to jump in a foxhole. I just wondered how you, in your long practice, deal with the reality that risk-taking is integral to business or any operation.
Certainly. It is integral, and enterprise risk management, I'll get into that, is about both managing both the downside and the upside. Firstly, I guess I would just make the editorial comment that because risk-taking is so essential and ERM is so inextricably linked to it, I don't think, in my own opinion, that ERM is optional anymore. There are so many stakeholders, and I've just listed a few here, that are just very, very focused on what organizations are doing around risk management. And those, as complexity has increased, as the economy has turned down and other things have happened, I think those shareholder or stakeholder expectations have only grown. Boards of directors, obviously, are held to a much higher standard in terms of understanding the risk profiles of their organizations and asking the probing and tough questions of senior management about the risk profile. Regulators, if you're in a financial institution right now, you know things like Dodd-Frank and others are almost crippling in terms of requiring risk management practices and compliance with those. Clients and partners are becoming much more concerned with how you're managing risk. I know at Invesco, and by the way, I will refer to Invesco quite a few times throughout this presentation. I just left Invesco after 4 years with a desire to get back into consulting, but I may even use the term we, just because it's fresh. But just to make this relevant and to try to give you some real-life examples, I will probably refer to what's most fresh in my mind, and that's my experience recently at Invesco Limited here in Atlanta. Another stakeholder rating agency, Standard & Poor's. Maybe some of you have already experienced the Standard & Poor's review, but stakeholders all over are much, much more interested in enterprise risk management, and it compels us to demonstrate that we're at least thinking about it, if not actively engaged in it at this point. So, Rick, back to your point. So, how does ERM deal with the reality of risk-taking, since risk-taking is so essential? I just think ERM seeks to optimize informed risk-taking. Risk-taking is essential. What ERM seeks to do is to make sure that those risk-taking decisions are made with full information about the attendant risks. I love this quote by Peter Senge. He wrote a book called The Fifth Discipline. The unhealthiness of our world is in direct relationship to our inability to see it as a whole. And I think that statement applies to countries, to governments, to organizations. And ERM really is about connecting the dots and cultivating, developing a view of the whole, particularly as it relates to the risk profile.